Count Todd woke the next morning with a pounding headache. Holding his head, he muttered, "Ah! Where am I?" His memory was hazy, but he recalled going to the Peach of May. Sweat beaded on his forehead as flashes of the previous night surfaced. His encounter with an escort, an unexpected attack, and then pain. He gasped, his face paling as he felt a sharp, unbearable pain in his lower body. Panic surged through him. "Hey, is anyone there? Someone, come quickly!" he shouted. A voice answered from the doorway. "Oh my, it seems he's woken up." Count Todd turned to see Blaine Shade entering the room. Blaine leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Duke Shade's son?" Count Todd stammered. "Then, does that mean this is Count Shade's estate?" "You should avoid moving too much," Blaine advised, pulling a chair to sit beside the bed. Count Todd winced, gripping the sheets. "What happened?" he asked through gritted teeth. "Do you know of the Peach of May, by any chance?" Blaine asked, his expression unreadable. "Pardon?" Count Todd feigned ignorance. "Are you also a patron, Sir Blaine?" Blaine's expression darkened. Count Todd flinched. "That place was an illegal brothel, disguised as a shop, exploiting young girls. I received an anonymous tip and confirmed everything myself," Blaine said, his tone steady. Count Todd forced a neutral expression. "Is that so?" "The nerve to conduct such a thing within Shade territory." Blaine's sharp gaze sent a chill down Todd's spine. He instinctively remained silent. Blaine continued. "While investigating, I found you unconscious and injured. Unfortunately, your attacker escaped." Todd's grip on the sheets tightened. "Your wounds were severe, so I administered first aid immediately," Blaine said. Then, after a pause, he added, "However, I'm afraid you won't be able to have children." Todd's breath hitched. His eyes widened in horror. "What? What do you mean?" he stammered. Pain shot through him as he cried out. Unbeknownst to him, Rita was eavesdropping just outside. "Quit crying," she thought with little sympathy. "It's not like anyone died." Todd took a shaky breath, composing himself. "What did you tell my household?" he asked. "I informed them you were gravely injured while assisting in the raid," Blaine replied. Todd exhaled in relief. "Thank you." Blaine's lips curled into a smirk. "However, I can only lie for so long." His tone was casual, but his eyes were anything but. The Shade family values honesty, after all. Rita raised an eyebrow at that. "Family values? Really?" she mused. "Is he truly the Duke's son?" Todd's heart pounded. "Please, don't say anything," he pleaded. Blaine ignored his desperation. "My younger sister, Julia, intends to join the Royal Guard." Todd cut him off immediately. "I'll ensure her admission." "No, I'll make sure she becomes the head of the Guard." His voice was eager, desperate to secure Blaine's silence. But Blaine simply retracted his hand. "No." Todd blinked in confusion. "Reject her application," Blaine ordered. "Make sure she never even gets near the Royal Guard." His voice turned cold. "Do you understand?" Todd was stunned. "Pardon?" "I won't allow a small, delicate girl like her to join," Blaine said, his face unreadable. "If she were to get hurt," he trailed off, as if saddened by the thought. Todd, however, knew better. Small? Delicate? Julia Shade? The idea was absurd. Blaine's expression hardened. "If anything were to happen to my sister—" "I understand," Todd interrupted. "In return, please keep this a secret." Blaine gave a slow nod. "On Duke Shade's honor," he promised. "Now, rest until someone from your household comes for you." He stood, bowed slightly, and exited the room. Once the door shut, a quiet chuckle escaped him. "To think she requested he be neutered. How amusing," he murmured, strolling down the hallway. Meanwhile, Rita heard a knock. "Lady Verta," Blaine Shade greeted as he entered. They exchanged formal bows. "You were a great help," Blaine said. "I must thank you." "I'm glad to be of service," she replied. Blaine studied her with an unreadable expression. Rita frowned. "What's with that look?" "Lady Verta," Blaine mused with a smirk. "What a shame to hand you over to another man." "If you ever need my assistance, please let me know. I'd love to express my gratitude," Blaine Shade said. Rita paused for a moment before offering a slight smile. "That gratitude, could you show it to me now?" She stepped closer, her expression composed. Blaine regarded her with interest. "How may I help you, Lady Verta?" he asked, swiftly placing a hand on her waist and pulling her closer. After a brief moment, he let go. Rita removed her gloves, revealing faint bruises on her hands. Blaine frowned as he gently took her hand. "What is this?" he asked, surprised by the marks. Rita exhaled softly, recalling her confrontation with Jean and Baron Jacquard. She had no intention of forgetting or forgiving. I had a small accident when my fiancé visited the other day, she said casually, lacing her fingers together. My, he must be quite passionate. Blaine remarked with an amused smile. May I ask what it is you need my assistance with? Rita's expression turned serious. By chance, do you know of Baron Jacquard? Instead of asking about her fiancé, she inquires about his subordinate. Blaine thought, slightly puzzled. I know that his family lacks prestige or wealth despite his title, Blaine said as he walked over to his seat. He also serves as your fiancé's bodyguard. I already know that, Rita thought, unimpressed. Blaine leaned back. At least, that's how he appears on the surface. In truth, he owns an underground establishment, the secret boutique of dreams. His lips curled into a knowing smile. A place where one can find many fascinating curios, if they know how to look. Rita remained silent. Blaine studied her reaction. So, Lady Verta isn't so different from other women after all. His thoughts drifted momentarily to a ball he had attended. Duke Shade's son is looking quite handsome tonight, a noblewoman whispered to her friend as they watched him converse with another guest. How can a man be so good-looking? Another murmured, blushing. Blaine had approached them with a charming smile. Enjoying your evening, ladies? Sir Shade, it's been so long, one of them had responded eagerly. We were just admiring how handsome Sir Hudson is, the second had added, her cheeks pink. So handsome, that Sir Hudson. They had sighed, exchanging glances. Ah, how predictable, Blaine had thought with amusement. Trying to stir my envy by mentioning another man. His attention snapped back to the present as Rita's voice broke the silence. Then, what do you know about my fiancé, Count Jean Lawrence? She asked, her tone laced with curiosity. Blaine raised an eyebrow. She actually wants to know more about him? It's not just a tactic? Feigning a smile, he replied. I would appreciate your honest opinion, Rita added, her gaze steady. Blaine hesitated briefly. My, how disappointing, he finally said, shaking his head. A beautiful lady, yet she insists on discussing other men in my presence. Rita let out a soft laugh. Oh my, what can I do to improve your mood? She asked, playful yet deliberate. Blaine smirked. Well, your fiancé is a lucky man. If you wish to soothe my jealousy. He tapped his lips with a finger, his expression suggestive. Rita's lips curved slightly. She took slow, measured steps toward him, her heels clicking softly against the floor. Blaine watched her closely, curiosity flickering in his eyes. What is she planning? She leaned in. Huh? Blaine thought, momentarily caught off guard. A soft breath ghosted against his neck. He felt his pulse quicken. Is she... Before he could react, Rita cupped his face, tilting his head slightly. His skin tingled where her fingers touched. Blaine parted his lips, expecting a kiss, but Rita did something unexpected. She leaned in further, her lips brushing against his ear, and in one slow, deliberate motion, she traced the shell with her tongue. Blaine's breath hitched. His fingers twitched. Then, as if testing his reaction, her hand trailed down, grazing over the fabric of his trousers. A shudder ran through him. He barely suppressed a sound, his body reacting instinctively. That's my... Rita murmured against his ear, her words deliberately left unfinished. She shifted slightly, biting down lightly on the side of his neck. A low sound escaped Blaine's lips. Her fingers pressed just a little harder against the growing heat below. Blaine, overwhelmed by the sensation, struggled to regain his composure. His mind clouded, his body betraying him. And then, she stopped. Rita straightened, adjusting her hair with a casual flick of her fingers. Blaine blinked, dazed, still caught in the haze of her touch. Get a grip, she whispered against his ear. His breath hitched as reality snapped back into focus. Rita took a step back, slipping her gloves on once more. Consider that an early payment, she said lightly. I trust you'll provide me with more information next time. Blaine could only watch, still reeling as she turned toward the door. No need to escort me out, she added, a final tease before making her exit. Blaine remained seated, expression unreadable, though his mind raced. Goodbye, for now, Rita said, glancing over her shoulder before disappearing through the door. Blaine exhaled, running a hand through his hair. She's dangerous. And yet, a smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. Blaine Shade stood by the window, gazing outside as his mind replayed his encounter with Rita. The way she had skillfully led him on, only to leave him flustered in the end. It was unsettling. She had me under her thumb. Just like that. I was careless. He let out a quiet sigh. There was something about her. Something dangerous. It was best to keep his distance, for now. Meanwhile, back at Alberhart Manor, Rita hurried into her parlor, sinking into her chair. She was exhausted. "I'll rest for a moment and wash up later," she murmured before drifting into sleep. A familiar scent filled her senses. Herb oil. The touch on her scalp was gentle yet firm, lulling her into relaxation. A soft sigh escaped her lips. "Jana?" she called out in her half-asleep state. "Are you awake, miss?" A voice responded. Rita's eyes fluttered open slightly to see Ian standing over her. "You looked weary, so I thought a massage might help," he said, his fingers pressing into her temples with practiced ease. Rita tensed for a moment, but soon relaxed under his touch. She hated to admit it. Why does he have to be so good at this? But she couldn't bring herself to push him away. As his hands continued their careful work, Ian spoke again. "I've noticed you've grown rather close to the Shade family's son." Rita's expression remained unreadable. "Miss, you must be careful," Ian continued, his hands trailing down to her shoulders. "For an engaged woman, being seen with another man can only invite trouble." His touch lingered a little too long as his hands moved downward. Before he could go any further, Rita smacked his hands away and stood abruptly. "I told you never to show yourself before me again," she said coldly. "Miss, I only have your well-being in mind," Ian began, but his words were cut off by a sharp slap. His glass slipped from his hand, shattering against the floor. "Appear before me again, and this will be the least of your worries," Rita warned, her voice dangerously low. Ian bent down to pick up his glass, his face flushed. "My lady, your fiancé is of the esteemed Lawrence family. I only hope you would consider Count Alberhart's reputation." Rita froze. "What?" She clenched her fists. "How dare you?" she hissed. Ian straightened himself, offering a polite bow. "I shall take my leave. Rest well, my lady." With that, he stepped out. Rita's breathing was uneven. "So, he has someone backing him now?" "Fine, but let's see how long that support lasts." A slow, calculating grin crept onto her lips. Later that evening, Rita stood before her mirror as Jana assisted her with her robe. "The moment I remove this, the scent will be overwhelming enough to disorient anyone nearby," she thought, watching herself closely. "Miss, here," Jana said, handing her a small perfume bottle. Rita took it with a satisfied nod. "Perfect." "Let's go," she instructed. "Yes, miss," Jana replied as they disappeared into the night. The two walked in silence through the dimly lit streets until they arrived at their destination. "Where do all your dreams come true?" Rita read the sign above the shop. "How incredibly tacky." She forced a polite smile. Turning to Jana, she asked, "Did you memorize the instructions I gave you?" "Of course, miss. And you remember what to do after?" "Yes. You can trust me." Rita smirked. They entered the shop. A sales attendant greeted them. "Welcome. How can I assist you?" Rita took a glance around before speaking. "Is this everything your shop has to offer?" "Yes, my lady," the man answered. Lifting her hand slightly, Rita revealed the bandages wrapped around her fingers. The attendant's expression faltered. "Those bandages? It can't be." Rita feigned a shy expression, lowering her gaze. The attendant immediately flushed. Jana stepped forward. "This shop doesn't seem to have anything my lady requires," she said, feigning disappointment. "I apologize," the man stammered. "May I ask what it is you're looking for?" A slow smile formed on Rita's lips as she stepped closer. Leaning in slightly, she whispered, "Something to help a lady sleep and have the deepest dreams." At the underground shop, the sales attendant was frozen with hesitation. Rita calmly requested Sleeping Beauty, a well-known but illicit potion. She recalled Blaine Shade's words about the shop's hidden trade in illegal substances. Powerful hallucinogens, tranquilizers, and even a suicide poison that mimicked death before turning fatal. The irony of its name amused her. Reluctantly, the attendant agreed to fetch the item. Meanwhile, in the marketplace, Jana confirmed to Lucia that their plan was in place. If things turned dangerous, she would signal the guards immediately. Disguised, Rita walked through the city streets, waiting for the bait to work. Soon enough, a voice called out in urgency, "Miss Alberhart!" Baron Chuckard had taken the lure. Smiling to herself, Rita allowed him to catch up. Chuckard forcefully grabbed Rita's shoulder, stopping her escape. The fragrance from her perfume clouded his thoughts. Ushering her into a secluded alley, he accused her of planning another suicide attempt. Rita remained composed, dismissing his concern. Demanding the potion, Jacquard extended his hand, but Rita refused, tears slipping down her cheeks. Frustrated, he blocked her against the wall and restrained her, his grip tightening as he searched for the vial. His touch grew invasive, but Rita kept her composure, glancing toward Jana across the street, hoping she would act. Unfortunately, the alley's darkness obscured Jana's vision. Jacquard soon realized the potion wasn't hidden where he first searched. Instead, he found a pouch tied at Rita's waist and ripped it away. Rita cried out, but before she could react, Jacquard pinned her to the wall again. Desperate, she pleaded with him, claiming Jean was a devil and that this was her only way to escape. For a moment, Jacquard hesitated. Her tears unsettled him, but he remained silent. After a long pause, he released her. "You cannot die, not as long as I am around," he stated before walking away. Watching him go, Rita smirked knowingly. "You love Verta, don't you, Jacquard?" she murmured. Jana rushed to Rita's side, apologizing for not acting sooner. Seeing Rita's torn cape, she became emotional, but Rita reassured her it was fine. "Let's go home," Rita said with a weary smile. "I'd love some of your tea." Determined to make up for her mistake, Jana wiped her tears and vowed to prepare the best tea yet. The two then headed back to Alberhart Manor. Back at the castle, Rita sat in her chambers with her trusted handmaiden Jana. "No word from Julia yet?" she inquired. "No, miss. I'm sorry. We've sent several calling cards," Jana informed her. Rita smirked. "Seems Julia's too embarrassed to show her face after being rejected from the royal guard." She leaned back in thought before adding, "Keep sending them until she responds." "Yes, miss," Jana replied, clenching her fists in determination. Rita then took a pouch and a letter from the table and walked toward Yersha, who was seated quietly, her gaze lifting at Rita's approach. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Yersha," Rita said as she sat down. The scent from the pouch was familiar to Yersha. "This perfume, it's Tatham's," she thought silently. "I need your help," Rita stated with a smile. Yersha remained cold. "How may I assist you?" "Verta's parents sent a letter from abroad. It seems they're in Tartham for an important transaction," Rita informed her. "Tatham is your homeland, no?" Yersha didn't respond, and silence settled between them. Rita's expression darkened as she recalled their first encounter. That day, Rita had been seething with anger. Clutching a blood-stained bounty notice with Yersha's face on it, she had thought, if this sorcerer could assassinate a sultan's mistress, she can surely help me. Determined, Rita had found Yersha's residence and pounded on the door with urgency. "What's all this ruckus? Are you insane?" an irritated neighbor had shouted. Rita had snapped back. "So what if I am? Mind your own business." Blood lingered at the corner of her mouth from a coughing fit, her eyes wild with determination. The neighbor, unnerved, quickly withdrew. Finally, the door had creaked open just slightly, revealing Yersha's cautious gaze. "A girl? Is she a bounty hunter?" Yersha had wondered. Before Yersha could react, Rita had forced the door wider and held up the bounty paper. "This is you, isn't it?" she had demanded. "I need your help." Yersha had sighed but stepped aside. "Come in." Once seated, Yersha had broken the silence. "My name is Yersha, meaning second flame born from the desert's most brilliant sands. And you?" "I'm Rita. They say you're a powerful sorcerer," Rita had said, wiping the blood from her mouth. "If I can grant your wish, if you will believe that. If I cannot, you will think me a fraud," Yersha had replied. "I am dying," Rita had admitted, gripping her dress tightly. "Can you save me?" Yersha had remained impassive. "Do I look like a doctor?" She had stood as if to leave. Desperation had driven Rita to grab Yersha's arm. "Then what about murder? How many people can you kill?" Yersha had paused, observing Rita's frantic state. "The law of the world is balance. To take a life, you must exchange it with another." "Then take mine. Let me trade my life to end another," Rita had pleaded. Yersha had considered. "How old is the person? How much time do they have left?" 40 years old. Likely 20 more to live," Yersha had sighed. "You don't have enough time left yourself. An unfair exchange nullifies any spell." Rita had fallen silent before grasping at another idea. "What about a suicidal girl?" A slow smile had formed on Yersha's lips. "I think I have an idea you'll like." Back in the present, Rita was glad she had found Yersha when she needed her most. "Verta's parents are staying at the palace. They've even dined with the Sultan and his wife. Would you like to read the letter? Rita asked, sliding it toward Yersha. Yersha tucked it into her cape. You didn't summon me to discuss your parents' business in Tatham. Why am I here? Rita's expression sharpened. I require a potion. A subtle one, difficult to detect, that only you can create. And the ingredients? Yersha asked. Make it a stimulant, but not for seduction. Something that turns a person as violent as a gladiator, Rita specified. My dear parents are far away. This is the perfect opportunity to rid myself of my fiancé. Yersha studied her. Another life ruined by that innocent face, she thought before rising from her seat. Send someone in 10 days. It will be ready, Yersha instructed. Rita smiled. Thank you, Yersha. She offered the pouch. Here, a gift. Yersha opened it, her expression softening. Dried dates, cloves, argan oil, and saffron. I wanted to get you something better, but this was all I could gather in time, Rita explained. Yersha inhaled the herbs with appreciation. Rita met her gaze with quiet conviction. You are my savior. One day, I will help you return home. The next morning, Rita woke up feeling elated. It's the perfect weather for a little scheming, she thought. Did you sleep well? Jana asked, holding a bowl of water. I want to go out today, Jana, Rita replied. Do you intend to go to the Shade Estate, miss? Jana asked. But we still haven't received an answer from Miss Julia, she added. Rita felt a bit perplexed, thinking, does this girl think Julia is my only friend? No, today, I'm going to the royal palace, Rita announced. Rita and her most trusted handmaiden, Jana, soon arrived at the royal palace, where they were greeted by a guard who offered to give them a tour. I expected the royal palace to be more extravagant, but it's actually more practical than I imagined, Rita remarked as she took in the grand buildings. That's the executive administration building over there, the guard pointed out. Suddenly, the sound of someone walking loudly caught their attention, and Jana was the first to recognize the figure. Huh? That's... Rita asked, curious. Julia Shade walked by, visibly angry and marching with purpose. It's infuriating enough to be rejected by the royal guard, she fumed. But how long is Count Todd going to be on sick leave? He should at least tell me the reason to my face. Rita smiled, noticing Julia's frustration. Julia, what are the chances we'd run into each other here? The goddess must be smiling upon us today. Julia was taken aback, though she quickly composed herself. Right, truly a stroke of luck, she replied, her voice shaky. Oh, you must have come from the Royal Guards building. Did you come to see your soon-to-be future workplace? How wonderful, Rita said with a hint of mockery. Rita clapped her hands, drawing the attention of those nearby. Verta, please be quiet. It's rude to be so loud, Julia muttered, feeling a bit embarrassed. Anyway, what brings you to the palace, Verta? Julia asked. I came to see my fiancé, Rita revealed. Our marriage may be arranged, but I've developed a fondness for him. I see. Well, I hope you have a nice time. I'm quite busy, Julia said, trying to move on. Rita quickly grabbed Julia's arm. Where do you think you're going? She thought to herself. Out loud, she said. Wow, Julia, you're so amazing. Unlike me, you've achieved everything through hard work and passion. A real officer of the Royal Guard, she added, almost gleefully. Julia's face tightened. Quit your chattering, girl, she thought, worried about being caught impersonating a government official. Let go, Julia whispered, noticing a guard standing nearby. Excuse me, do you work for the Royal Guard? Rita asked, drawing the guard's attention. Pardon? Ah, yes, that is correct, my lady, the guard replied. Then I suppose you'll be working together with my friends soon, Rita continued. Julia here will soon be an officer of the Royal Guard. Please treat her kindly. Julia turned bright red. Verta, enough. I was rejected from the guard, she admitted finally. Rejected? Rita asked, surprised. I'm sorry. I didn't know. That isn't the reason you've been rejecting my calling cards, is it? She asked with genuine concern. No, I've just been busy. You should hurry and go see your fiancé, Julia said, eager to leave. Yes, goodbye for now. Let's have tea time soon, Rita said with a wave as Julia walked away. Ah, that felt great. Now on to my pervert fiancé. Just you wait, I brought you a present, Rita thought as she entered the administrative building in the royal palace. Is this the executive administration building? Rita asked a guard. Yes, miss. May I ask what business you have here? The guard replied. I'm looking for Sir Jean Lawrence, Rita said. Ah, Sir Jean Lawrence. He works on the 4th floor. I can show you the way, the guard offered. but Rita declined. No, I wouldn't want to impede. I can find it myself, she said before walking off. What in the world is going on? Jean thought to himself. She's been unusually forward lately. How nice it would have been if she'd acted like this from the start. Stupid girl, always changing her mind, never knowing what's good for her. He knocked on the door of the waiting room where Rita was waiting. Come in, she called. Ver, what a pleasant surprise. What brings you all the way here? Jean asked, surprised. Thank you for making time, Jean, Rita said with a smile. Of course, Jean thought. She's back to her old self, acting pitiful and innocent. The aroma of this tea is exquisite. Shall I pour you a cup? Rita asked sweetly. No, I'll do it myself, Jean replied, taking the teacup and pouring some tea. Rita sighed softly. What is it this time? Jean asked, noticing her change in demeanor. Rita began sobbing, which irritated Jean. Now, don't be like that. In order for me to help you, you must tell me what's wrong, he said, trying to remain patient. I can't do this anymore. It's too hard. I'm begging you, please call off our engagement, Rita sobbed. I cannot marry you, Rita says, her voice breaking as tears fall from her eyes. At this point, Jean had lost count of how many times Rita had repeated those exact words. He sighed, unmoved by her pleas. Please say something, Jean, Rita begged, covering her face with her hands. Jean was weary of her constant begging. Verta, you're well aware that, regardless of what we want, this is an important union, he said, smiling coldly. How can you be so cold? Rita asked, her sobs continuing. I've told you many times, this engagement is between our households, John replied. Is the reputation of your household really that important? Rita asked, frustrated. You don't even love me. Can't you let me go? She pleaded, resuming her fake tears and covering her face while peeking at Jean. He sat, absent-minded, drinking his tea. Rita remembered asking Yersha for a potion that would be difficult to detect, one that could only be made by Yersha herself. When asked about the potion's components, Rita told Yersha she needed it as a stimulant to provoke violence. She planned to use it to hatch a scheme to rid herself of her fiancé. Rita knew that accusing Jean of attempted rape would be too obvious, so she needed a more decisive approach. Before Jean entered the room, Rita poured the contents of the potion Yersha had prepared into her teapot, the same tea Jean was about to drink. You're wondering why I don't love you, Jean remarked. But you're so beautiful. I do love you, he added, his hands trembling slightly. How predictable, Rita thought as she observed the potion beginning to take effect. It hurts me that you don't see my feelings for you, Verta, Jean continued. Rita noted that he had held out until now, but he wouldn't be able to much longer. Then why did you force me to kiss Baron Jacquard? Rita asked, wiping away her tears. You say you love me, yet you throw me at another man. How can you call yourself my fiancé? She demanded. Verta, enough! Jean snapped, irritated. She's being decidedly irritating today, he thought to himself. His hand began trembling more than before. To calm himself, Jean poured more tea and drank it. Rita smiled to herself. Now for the closing act, she thought. I know everything, she said coldly. What are you talking about now? Jean asked, looking at her in confusion. You're lacking down there, aren't you? Rita said with a sharp gaze. I saw everything, she added, her expression cold. What? Jean replied, taken aback by her words. Rita's mind flashed back to the time she had seen Jean and Baron Jacquard. I saw everything. You're so small and pathetic that you have your friends do it for you, right? Rita spat angrily. What did you just say? Jean asked, now furious. You eunuch fool, Rita cursed him, her voice full of disdain. Jean couldn't believe what he was hearing. His anger swelled uncontrollably. Did it work? Rita wondered. In an instant, Jean rushed toward Rita and slapped her, sending her to the ground. You brought this upon yourself. Understood? He yelled. From now on, watch your mouth. He stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I can't even put into words how insane that girl is, Jean muttered in anger as he walked away. Rita looked at her reflection in a mirror. He doesn't look like much, but he's stronger than I thought, she mused, as she observed the bruise on her face. Even though I gave him a stimulant, it only took one blow. He's more patient than I expected for a pervert, she thought with a wide smile. Outside the waiting room, Rita wandered through the 4th floor, taking in the surroundings. The sky is especially beautiful today, she remarked as she gazed out of the window. Unbeknownst to Rita, Prince Van Brandt was passing through the building. Upon seeing her, his eyes lit up. He watched her for a moment before calling, "Miss Alberhart?" Rita turned, surprised. "Ah, it's an honor to meet you, Prince Brandt," she said, greeting him as she gently lifted her gown. "You don't have to," the prince said, his attention drawn to her face. He quickly approached her, concerned. "What happened to your face?" he asked, taking her hands gently. "Oh, this? It's nothing, Your Highness," Rita says quickly, trying to hide her face, which bears a mark from Jean's blow. Why do I have such terrible timing with this man? Rita thought, realizing she hadn't expected to meet the prince just then. "Did someone dare strike you, my lady?" Prince Brandt asked, his concern growing. "I will have the culprit brought to justice. Just say the word." "Oh, heavens, no! I simply made a little mistake. It's nothing, really," Rita lied, smiling as she spoke. She couldn't let him interfere with her plans. Stepping closer, Prince Brandt asked, "Are you sure?" His concern for her well-being was clear. "You're very kind, but I really can't," Rita replied quietly. "After all the work I've put into this plan, I can't be caught now," she thought to herself. "Forgive me, Your Highness. I must be on my way now," Rita says, leaving the prince somewhat confused. "Yes, I understand. I pray your journey is a safe one," he replies, bidding her farewell. Rita hurries down the stairs, eager to avoid any further questions, but Prince Brandt isn't convinced. That mark. Someone definitely struck her. But who would dare harm a lady so delicate? He wonders. Looking up at the fourth-floor staircase, he recalls the presiding official there. But I can't make any accusations just yet, he thinks. Back at the Alberhart Manor, Rita stands in front of a long hallway, fully dressed in protective gear. Jana is concerned. Rita wears a helmet and heavy clothing. "The other girls?" Rita asks. "They've all left as you instructed," Jana replies, her voice trembling. "But miss, why have you returned like this after going to all that trouble to dress up for the royal palace?" Rita remains silent. Poor Jana, but it's better I don't tell her what's about to happen, Rita thinks. If she knew what I had planned, she might faint. Rita tries to bend down to adjust her boots, but they're too tight. "I can't bend over," she mutters in frustration. "I'll do it, miss," Jana says, helping her. She puts on Rita's boots for her. Rita knows Jana is the only one she can rely on right now. "All done, miss," Jana says after helping her. "With all this padding, I'd survive even if a 6-horse carriage ran me over," Rita thinks to herself, feeling reassured. "Jana," Rita calls. "Yes, miss?" Jana responds. "Wait for me at the bottom of the stairs," Rita instructs. "When I get there, take me to my room and remove all these clothes. Understand?" "Yes, miss," Jana says, hurrying to the bottom of the stairs, though confused. As Jana wonders what Rita could be planning, she briefly considers whether Rita is preparing to lose weight for the summer. "But my lady is already so slender," Jana thinks. Rita watches Jana descend the stairs. The union between aristocratic families won't collapse over one slap. Rita reflects before purposely missing a step. "I got slapped yesterday, but now I'll find the strength to move forward." As Rita tumbles down the stairs, Jana cries out, "Miss!" Rita hits each step hard, ultimately reaching the bottom. "Good heavens, miss!" Jana exclaims, rushing to her side. "Another suicide attempt?" she wonders, seeing Rita in pain. "Miss, are you all right?" Jana asks, teary-eyed. Rita grimaces in pain. "That really hurt," she thinks, almost blacking out. "Jana," she murmurs weakly. "Yes, miss," Jana replies. "Do as I told you," Rita insists. "Pardon?" Jana asks before remembering the request from earlier. "Yes, miss," Jana says, helping Rita to her feet. "Please, if something's broken, it's best not to move you," Jana says, still concerned. "I'm fine. Just do it," Rita says, despite the pain, her determination clear. Jana helps Rita to her room as she groans in pain. Once seated, Rita asks Jana to remove her helmet, feeling dizzy. She warns Jana never to attempt a sauna under such conditions before drifting off to sleep, recalling that her fall down the stairs had been unavoidable. The next day, Rita wakes up and asks for a mirror. Examining her bruises, she notes they aren't as severe as she expected, but still noticeable. After checking the time, she asks Jana to prepare an outfit. She plans to go out. Rita arrives at Jean's castle, where a butler questions her unexpected visit. Noticing her injuries, he offers to call a doctor, but she declines, subtly covering her face. Unbeknownst to him, Rita had applied makeup to make her bruise appear more prominent, ensuring no one would suggest medical attention. Inside, she asks if Jean is home. The butler informs her he is still at the palace but offers to send word of her visit. Of course, he isn't home. I planned it this way, Rita thinks before thanking him. Before he leaves, she asks if Baron Jacquard is present. Upon confirmation, she requests to see him. Meanwhile, Jacquard hesitates outside the door, lost in thought. He recalls a conversation with Jean, where John had mocked a woman's misfortune and suggested Jacquard entertain her instead. He also remembers overhearing Verta's desperate pleas, realizing she was more vulnerable than he had assumed. Back in the present, Jacquard wonders why Rita has come now. Inside the room, unaware of his hesitation, Rita discreetly pours a potion into a cup of tea. When she hears a knock, she quickly hides the vial. Jacquard enters but does not immediately approach. He studies her in silence, recalling their past encounter. Finally, he sits across from her, avoiding eye contact. He won't even look at me, Rita notes. She realizes Baron Jacquard is afraid of her. Baron Jacquard sits down, asking Rita why she called him. She apologizes, saying she has something urgent to discuss. Pressed for time, Jacquard agrees to listen while he drinks a cup of tea. As he sips, he suddenly feels unsettled. Rita, in tears, begs him for a special potion, claiming it's her only way to escape John. Her emotional outburst stuns Jacquard. He grabs her arm, noticing scars that he realizes weren't self-inflicted. Demanding an explanation, he is taken aback when Rita mockingly asks if he likes what he sees before breaking down again. She insists she has no way out. Whether by Jean's hand or her own, she will be doomed either way. Her words provoke Jacquard's anger as he reflects on how Jean mistreats her. Unbeknownst to him, the potion Rita slipped into his tea is taking effect. She continues pleading, pressing her face against his shoulder and deliberately leaving a lipstick mark on his shirt. Jacquard, momentarily flustered, pulls away. Finishing his tea, he reminds her of their deal and leaves. Unaware, Rita is silently crying behind him. Outside, Jacquard, still fuming, bumps into Jean. Jean immediately notices the lipstick stain and taunts him, accusing him of getting too close to Rita. When Jacquard remains silent, Jean coldly admits to hurting Rita, justifying it as teaching her a lesson. His words fuel Jacquard's anger, especially when Jean callously suggests he could use her to his advantage. Unable to contain himself, Jacquard punches John, knocking him to the ground. Overcome with rage, he continues attacking him as guards rush in. Alarmed, the guards call for clubs and begin striking Jacquard to subdue him. Watching from her room, Rita is surprised at how strongly the potion affected Jacquard. As chaos unfolds, she quietly slips away, knowing it will take time for things to settle. Taking the opportunity, she searches through the castle and stumbles upon a hidden room, revealing Jean's secret and depraved interests. Smirking, she realizes she may have just found something useful.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the recap, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more Manhwa content. See you in the next one.